Welcome to another episode of Trial Site News. Today we're going to be discussing a National Institutes of Health study, which identified a neuropathic side effect with SARS-CoV-2 vaccination. We're going to break down what is happening here. And so, from Trial Site News, I am Adrian, and our episode is starting right now. So, a team of researchers from various institutes within the National Institutes of Health, or the NIH, led by corresponding author Avindra Nath, a senior investigator and clinical director at the National Institutes of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, otherwise known as NINDS, which is part of the NIH, have reported on study results associating the COVID-19 vaccines with neuropathic side effects. This observational and yet-to-be-reviewed study should not be cited as evidence until it is formally reviewed. Moreover, the authors declare that more time is necessary for scientists and physicians to determine the true nature of any causal relation between the COVID-19 vaccines and neuropathies. So to better understand the story, let's first start with the background. The team first established that the current first-generation COVID-19 vaccines are characterized by a, quote, small number of post-immunization side effects. They acknowledge that since the vaccines were introduced in December of 2020, the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, otherwise known as VAERS, featured a wide variety of neurological and system manifestations. Noteworthy, of course, to the story is that the NIH authors point out some observed neurological-based side effects with select COVID-19 vaccines. The NIH-funded authors also established that the risks associated with vaccination are markedly lower than those associated with infection of SARS-CoV-2, which of course is the virus behind COVID-19. So what then were the key observations here? Well, as reported by the NIH scientists, 14 of the study patients, or 65%, developed neurological symptoms after the first dose of the vaccine. During the second dose, 39% of the participants developed symptoms. Out of this latter group, 17% reported similar but mild and transient symptoms after their initial vaccination. 2 had mild and transient elevation in ALT/AST post-vaccination, and 2 had low-titer ANA and dsDNA antibodies that normalized on subsequent testing. The NIH team also noted that while no study participant reported symptoms or had a confirmed COVID-19 infection prior to getting a dose of the vaccine, the team did detect antibodies to SARS-CoV-2 nucleocapsid protein in one that they attributed to asymptomatic COVID-19. Now, of the total, 21% of the patients reported symptoms, including skin flushing, tachycardia, and boosted blood pressure immediately after receiving the COVID-19 vaccines, which lasted less than 30 minutes and were fully resolved. All the patients in the study developed neurological symptoms within 21 days of getting a dose of the vaccines. 4 days was the median time. Now, the authors declared that the circumstantial evidence here suggests that in some individuals, SARS-CoV-2 vaccination neuropathy may be disimmune. So what were the considerations and limitations of this study? Well, based on the findings of the study, the investigators suggest that after observing all the patients' symptomatic responses to the vaccines that there was, quote, the possibility of immune priming to the spike protein. The authors also note that while only one of the patients was associated with pre-vaccination COVID-19 infection, cross-reactivity between seasonal beta coronaviruses and subunits of SARS-CoV-2 spike protein might play a priming role. It is also worth noting that the study could be impacted by referral bias, and there could be temporal association of the symptoms to the vaccine given lack of study controls. The authors cannot ensure that they have found a causative role, while the data overall from vaccine clinical trials implies these side effects are rare. The authors of the studies note, quote, that case reports link other immune-mediated conditions such as idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura, acute onset myocarditis, and Guillain-Barré syndrome to SARS-CoV-2 vaccination. Yet, they remind specificity cannot be confirmed. And finally, the NIH team reminds everyone that not all of the data associated with the patients is complete, due to the fact that some engagements were via telemedicine. So what then is the core finding here? Well, the study's findings establish some evidence, which must be validated via peer review and probably additional study, that COVID-19 vaccination can lead to, at least in some people, disimmune neuropathy. The authors posit that, quote, the fact that participants were screened and common causes of neuropathy eliminated, the presence of oligoclonal bands in the CSF of 2 of 5 participants, disposition of immune complexes on skin biopsy, and apparent response to immunotherapy supports possible immune involvement. 100% of the participants reported sensory symptoms comprising severe face and/or limb paresthesia, and 61% had orthostasis, heat intolerance, and palpitations. Autonomic testing in 12 identified 7 with reduced distal sweat production and 6 with positional orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. 16 of the participants had lower leg skin biopsies. 31% of these had diagnostic subthreshold epidermal neurite densities. 13% were borderline, and 19% showed abnormal axonal swelling. Among the 16 with lower leg skin biopsies, 31% had biopsies from randomly selected 5 patients that were evaluated for immune complexes showed disposition of complement C4d in endothelial cells. Electrodiagnostic test results were normal in 94%. Together, 52% of patients had objective evidence of small fiber peripheral neuropathy. 58% of the patients were treated with oral corticosteroids had complete or near complete improvement after 2 weeks, as compared to 9% of patients who did not receive immunotherapy having full recovery at 12 weeks. With 5 to 9 months post-symptom onset, 3 non-recovering patients received intravenous immunoglobulin with symptom resolution within 2 weeks. So what then does this study data add to current hypothesis about COVID-19? Well, the neurological incidence is disimmune rather than directly infectious. For example, a post-mortem study of the COVID-19 related deceased nerve pathology found inflammatory perivascular infiltrates of predominantly macrophages, less evidence of viral antigen in the nerves. So what then is another key time-based limitation? Well, the NIH researchers declare that there is not enough time elapsed for the large-scale epidemiological studies necessary to confirm or refute causal relations between SARS-CoV-2 vaccination and immune-mediated diseases. Consequently, all findings here are, quote, preliminary. So how then were these patients with vaccine-related side effects treated? Well, some responded to corticosteroids, while more severe and refractory causes to IVIG. The physician investigators caution that these particular approaches can be expensive and risky, and hence should be used cautiously. And then, of course, some patients did improve without the use of immunotherapy. Now, the funding for the study was done by the NINDS intramural funds, the National Multiple Sclerosis Society grant, and the Mayday Fund. Now, to learn more about the study, you can follow the link in the description below to the preprint study. And it is worth noting again that more research is needed, and we here at Trial Site News strongly encourage the NIH to assertively follow up on additional studies here. And that, my friends, is bringing our episode to a close once more. As always, thank you so much for joining me on the program today. From Trial Site News, I am Adrian, and I will see you all next time.